Welcome back, focused learners. Okay, so today we're diving into something absolutely wild. We're going to decode one of the most incredibly dense, highly mystical texts from antiquity, the Gospel of the Egyptians. And we're going to take all these deeply abstract, almost mind-bending spiritual concepts and translate them into a clear, visual family tree of the universe. Seriously, we're looking at nothing less than a cosmic blueprint of reality itself, meticulously mapped out by ancient thinkers. Just listen to this quote right off the bat. The Father whose name cannot be pronounced. Right? This text instantly hooks us because it establishes the ultimate mystery. I mean, we're dealing with an origin point that is so transcendent, so completely beyond human comprehension, that it literally defies language. You can't even name it. Which kind of forces you to ask, how do you explain the unexplainable? How on earth do you map out a universe that begins in total, unnameable mystery? Well, somehow, the authors of this text found a way. Now, I know that sounds heavy, but don't worry. Despite how abstract this text is, it actually gives us a really clear logical roadmap. We're going to break it down into 4 simple steps today. First, the Great Invisible Spirit. Second, the 3 powers. Third, the 3 Ogdoads. And finally, number 4, the birth of Seth. All right, let's jump right into step 1, the Great Invisible Spirit. So the text has this monumental task of giving structure to something that existed before time and matter even were. And it does this by using these contrasting, incredibly poetic concepts right next to each other. On one hand, we've got this boundless, radiant light, the light of the aeons, the light of word and truth, just this infinite, uncontainable energy. But then, immediately paired with that, we have deep, profound silence. The silence of providence, the father of silence, complete and utter hiddenness. It's like this perfect, razor-edge tension between blinding illumination and total quiet stillness. And that is exactly what defines the Great Invisible Spirit. Okay, so the crucial point here is how the text actually defines this entity. It gives us a very specific term, autogenes. And if we break down that precise textual definition, autogenes means self-born, self-creating, alien, and the truly true aeon. So we're not talking about a creator who was made by something else, right? This origin point is completely self-generating. It needs absolutely nothing outside of itself to exist. It's totally self-sufficient, completely alien to anything in our physical reality, and it represents the absolute truth of existence. Moving on, let's look at section 2, the 3 powers. Let's move to and see how this builds because the text gets highly specific here, honestly, almost mathematical, about how these powers start emerging from that living silence. First, it tells us that 3 primary powers, Father, Mother, and Son, come from the uncorrupted silence. But as this emanation continues, it assigns them this incredibly precise sequential order in the broader cosmic hierarchy. The Son comes forth as the 4th, the Mother emerges as the 5th, and the Father comes forth as the 6th. It's a fascinating numerical sequence, and it really shows us that this isn't just random chaos. This is a highly ordered, structured unfolding of reality. But that raises a question. How do these new powers see? Like, what actually powers them? Well, the text introduces a mysteriously named entity to do exactly that, Domedin Doxamidin. According to the source, this entity is the Aeon of Aeons, and it acts as the literal illuminating force, the light for those exact powers we just talked about. Basically, Domedin Doxamidin makes sure that as the universe expands outward from that hidden silence, it stays completely bathed in divine light. All right, that brings us to our 3rd section, the 3 Ogdoads. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the blueprint expands further into these structural layers called Ogdoads. The text actually gives us a perfectly organized 7-point checklist of attributes for the first Ogdoad, which it associates with the androgynous father and the thrice male child. Check out this list: thought, word, incorruptibility, eternal life, will, mind, and foreknowledge. It's honestly like the ancient authors are laying out the foundational software required to run a divine universe. Because think about it. Before you can have any kind of physical creation, you absolutely need the building blocks of consciousness, thought, will, and mind. And they all have to be perfectly preserved in eternal life and incorruptibility. And from that first octoad, we flow right into the second. This is where the text introduces the mother power, specifically naming her as the virginal Barbelo, along with this mysterious title, Epitikioch. Now, the text makes a huge point to emphasize her nature. She is invisible and unpronounceable.
Sound familiar? Right, just like the great invisible spirit we talked about at the very beginning. The second octoad originated completely from herself, in total agreement with the Father, just resting there in the fullness of silence.
To wrap up this massive triad of cosmic architecture, we get the third Ogdoad. Let's compare these layers really quick to connect the dots. The first Ogdoad gave us the androgynous father, full of mind and will. The third Ogdoad brings us the sun. And check out the title given to the sun, Autogenes. Yep, that perfectly matches that exact self-born, self-creating definition we decoded all the way back in step 1. So the blueprint is essentially showing us that the end reflects the beginning. Those divine traits of the unnameable origin are perfectly preserved and passed all the way down through this third structural layer. Which finally leads us to our last section, the birth of Seth. So, after all this complex emanation, the blinding light, the profound silence, the mathematical powers, and the massive structural layers of the Ogdoads, what was the actual point of this entire cosmic schematic? Who came forth from these 3 Ogdoads in silence? The answer is Seth. The whole text culminates in the revelation of Seth, who emerges directly out of these structural layers. And he isn't just a random figure, right? He is explicitly defined as the son of the living silence. Everything we just mapped out, all that complex architecture, the Autogenes, the bar below with foreknowledge, the whole shebang exists purely to bring forth Seth as the ultimate inheritor of the divine realm. He is the direct, literal product of the living silence. And honestly, this brings us to what I think is the most beautiful realization in this entire explainer. The text states that Seth and really all of these Ogdoads exist right here. In silence, in the great invisible spirit, in the incorruptible Father. These ancient authors didn't just build a straight line of creation, they built a perfect cosmic loop. After all that massive expansion, all the powers, all the emanations, everything ultimately rests exactly where it began, held forever within that profound, unnameable silence. It really leaves us to wonder, if the ultimate fundamental reality of the universe is found in complete, uncorrupted silence, how much are we actually missing by constantly filling our own lives with noise? Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me to decode this incredible cosmic blueprint today. And as always, keep on learning.